All right, picture this for a second. You pull into the parking lot, you turn off the engine, and you just sit there for a minute, completely dreading the next 2 hours. An important client has invited you to an open house, and honestly, you hate these things. You don't know what to say, you don't know anyone except the host, and you always feel like you're just trying desperately not to look lost. So you sink a little deeper into your car seat, agonizing over exactly how long you have to stay, maybe even secretly hoping for a fake emergency just to get you out of there. Trust me. We have all been there. So let's dive right into this universal fear. The anxiety of small talk is something almost everyone experiences. In fact, get this. Did you know that while public speaking is the #1 social fear in America, the fear of actually starting a conversation with a stranger is sitting right there at #2? It's huge. So when you finally walk into that luncheon or that cocktail party, just remember, most of the people in that room are just as scared to talk to you as you are to talk to them. To unpack exactly how we can overcome this, in this explainer, we're looking at the really brilliant insights from Debra Fine's book, The Fine Art of Small Talk. Now, what makes her perspective so fascinating is her own personal journey. She definitely wasn't born with the gift of gab. In fact, she describes herself as a formerly overweight, reticent kid who grew up to be a deeply introverted engineer. She specifically chose a highly technical career because, well, it required very little chatting. Whenever she was sent to conferences, she was just filled with panic. She'd arrive late, leave early, and basically pray someone would rescue her from the awkward silence. But here is the absolute crucial takeaway. Conversation is an acquired skill. It is not some innate talent you either have or you don't. For Debra, this realization totally clicked during a pretty life-changing encounter. After going through a divorce, she realized she needed to start socializing again. So she's at a happy hour, and she keeps making eye contact with this man across the room, but he never comes over. Naturally, she assumes it's a rejection, right? She figures she just wasn't his type. But prodded by a friend, she finally takes a deep breath, walks over, and introduces herself to the man, whose name was Rex. As they eventually became close friends, she learned the real reason he hadn't approached her. He wasn't rejecting her at all. He was just incredibly shy. And that flipped a massive switch for her. She realized there are countless wonderful, highly educated people out there who are just incredibly shy, and that small talk is really just a tool we can learn to build rapport with them. You know, it turns out that the outdated childhood rules we were all taught are actually what's holding us back in adult networking. Think about it. When we were kids, what were we taught? Wait to be properly introduced, silence is golden, and whatever you do, do not talk to strangers. Now, those rules kept us safe back then, but as adults, they completely sabotage us. In adult reality, you absolutely have to talk to strangers if you want to expand your circle. You have to introduce yourself, because let's be real, hosts are rarely going to expertly walk you around the room. And most importantly, silence is actually impolite. In the professional world, keeping entirely to yourself can so easily be mistaken for arrogance or snobbery. To really succeed at small talk, we need a completely new mindset. As the great Will Rogers famously said, go out on a limb. That's where all the fruit is. To thrive in any conversation, you have to embrace 2 core tenets. Number 1, take the risk. It is entirely up to you to make the first move. And number 2, and this is a big one, assume the burden. It is your responsibility to come up with topics, to remember names, and to smooth over those awkward moments. You literally have to assume the burden of making other people comfortable. When you do that, people will feel so good about doing business and socializing with you. All right, so take in the conversational plunge. Here are 4 steps to success. Let's see how this builds into a really actionable toolkit so you can do this without the panic. You can use this simple 4-step process every single time you walk into a room. First, make eye contact. Second, smile. Third, find the approachable person. Now, who is that exactly? It's that solitary person getting a bite to eat, maybe sitting alone at a table, or crossing the room completely unescorted. Trust me on this. They are silently praying for someone to rescue them. And fourth, step right up. Offer your name and use theirs. Learning and using names is probably the single most important rule of good conversation. And hey, if you miss their name, confess immediately. Don't try to fake it. Just say, I'm so sorry, I missed your name, please remind me. It shows you actually care enough to get it right. Moving on to giving them something to talk about and avoiding dead ends. Once you've broken the ice, the next step is keeping that ball rolling. There is a massive difference between dead-end questions and open-ended alternatives. When you ask something like, are you married or do you have kids, you're basically backing people into a corner where they can only answer yes or no. The conversation just stops. But by simply shifting that to, tell me about your family, you invite them to comfortably share their own story, offering up as much or as little as they want. Even the classic, everyday, "How was your weekend?" usually just gets a one-word reply like, "Fine." But if you tweak it and ask, "What was the best part of your weekend?" or "What went on for you this weekend?" you practically force a more descriptive, engaging answer. Next up, finding free information and using clues for conversation. So, what happens when the conversation inevitably starts to dry up? To prevent those awkward, pregnant pauses, you need to train yourself to look and listen. Free information is literally all around you if you just pay attention. Astute observers use specific clues to effortlessly keep the dialogue rolling. For example, really listen to the answers people give you. If someone casually says, "Oh, I used to do R&D in Buffalo, New York, and I hated it," well, they just handed you 3 pieces of free information. You can ask about R&D, you can ask about those brutal Buffalo winters, or you can ask why they hated the job so much. Also, look at appearances: a Rotary Club lapel pin, a marathon t-shirt, or a really unique piece of jewelry. Consider behavior too. If you notice someone is left-handed or you hear a subtle accent, politely ask about it. It shows you are paying close attention to them as an individual. And let's face it, people love to feel noticed. Now for the art of listening. Hearing aids and listening devices. You can ask all the right questions in the world, but it all falls apart if you don't understand the profound distinction between merely hearing someone and actively listening to them. There's this really poignant anecdote from the text about an 8-year-old boy named Nicholas. He comes home from school just bubbling with excitement, and he's telling his dad all about his art project, his soccer goal, and the pizza he had for lunch. His dad, who is reading the newspaper, is just passively absorbing the sound. When Nicholas finally sighs and says in total frustration, "Dad, you're not listening to me," his dad perfectly repeats back the list of facts: art, soccer, pizza. But Nicholas replies, "No, Dad, that's not it. You're not listening to me with your eyes." He didn't just want a data download, He wanted connection. Visual cues like eye contact, smiling, and nodding are absolutely essential. They prove to the speaker that you are truly, deeply invested in their story. Think about what happens when we operate on complete autopilot. Imagine 2 businessmen passing each other on the street, just exchanging empty cliches. "How's it going?" "Not bad." "How's tricks?" "You bet." They are completely disconnected. As the psychoanalyst Dr. Ann Applebaum noted in the text, humans have a massive, deep-seated hunger for validation. When we just throw out empty phrases without making eye contact, we completely fail to validate that other person. Good small talk, at the end of the day, is ultimately about making the other person feel heard and significant. Which brings us to our final challenge for you. Think about the very next time you find yourself sitting in your car, dreading walking into a room full of strangers. Are you going to stay stuck in those childhood rules, waiting in silence for someone to rescue you? Or will you assume the conversational burden? Remember, the people inside that room are just as nervous as you are. So go out on a limb, make eye contact, smile, find that approachable person, and ask them to tell you a story. You might just make a lifelong connection.